digitalization pioneer and serial entrepreneur, for kindly accepting our invitation to address this session. I also welcome distinguished members of the Chamber, honored guests, media friends, and the entrepreneurship fraternity to this session today. As we all know that startups have a huge role to play in the developmental journey of the country in terms of creation of wealth as well as generation of employment opportunities. We're extremely happy to note that India has become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world after the US and China, as per the estimates of the Economic Survey 2021-22. India has the distinct advantage of leveraging a very young population and their skills and capabilities to drive the nation forward in the path of growth and innovation. With 62% of the population in the working age group and 54% below the age of 25, India is easily the youngest nation today. MCCI has instituted a startup forum to address issues faced by the startup community and to connect them with medium and large companies and also the policymakers. Through this facilitation forum, MCCI has started connecting startups with academia, incubators, investors, angel funds, and VCs for the startups to connect and grow. In this endeavor, we are collaborating with reputed B schools and colleges of Kolkata and districts to reach out to the student community. It is often said that entrepreneurs are not born, they are driven to it. And this same drive enables them to do what is necessary to be an entrepreneur. Starting a business requires not only a lot of time, but also a lot of hard work and intense planning. It is said that gaps in the market are to be tapped and feasible solutions to be thought of to bridge those gaps. Market research to indicate if there's an opportunity to turn an idea into a successful business. In an entrepreneurial journey, writing an effective business plan is the first step of planning and starting a successful business. In a simple language, a business plan is a document which describes a business, its products or services, how money will be earned and spent, its leadership and staffing, its financing, its operations model, as also the customer base existing as well as prospective. A business plan explains a business strategy, including the marketing strategy, the customers, the competitors, the financial forecast, setting sales goals, expense budgets, and predictions for cash flow. It has been found that companies that take time to write a plan and review it regularly grow 30% faster than those businesses that don't. Not does the former category grow faster, but they also perform better and are less likely to fail in the long run. The next area of importance is the creation of a successful pitch. A successful pitch is a persuasive presentation which an entrepreneur uses to convince an organization or an individual to invest in their business. Usually made to be concise, clear, and informative, a business pitch has to be attention grabbing so that investors can take a call. In this session, we will listen to Dr. Singh. In this session, we will listen to Mr. Singh, who will deliberate on these topics and guide us through the different areas of writing of an effective business plan and creating a successful pitch. With these few words, I now request him to enlighten us on this important and interesting subject today. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir. Is also going to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Kothari, and thanks to the MCCI for this opportunity, and a warm welcome to and a good evening to all the attendees. Without, I think, much ado, I'll probably go straight in, but maybe a quick 30-second of an introduction. So I guess you know my name by now. I currently am focused on building a social enterprise. It's called YGRO, YGROO.org. And it's largely focused on making learning accessible, affordable, and inclusive. Have about 25 years of, almost a quarter of a century experience in digital. Worked, in the corner office, so fairly early, led a couple of MNCs as the CEO and MD. Decided that it was enough, got bored with it, and then, for the last about 16 years, I have been focused on, building businesses, grounds up, and interestingly, largely bootstrapped. So, because it's one thing to build a business And we'll talk about a few of these terms as we go along, right? Bootstrapping is when you're kind of investing your own money in building the business, right? And that requires every penny and every decision that you make, to be absolutely sure. So I did at some stage, in fact, some of the businesses that I focused on, which are consumer businesses, so you would know, was a business called Travel Guru. In fact, we acquired that business when it was, not doing so good for a small amount. And then in about 2 to 3 years, we turned it around and made it into, at that stage, this was about 2009, 2010. By 2012, it was the country's largest hotel booking network. Subsequently, we sold that business to Yatra. Thereafter, I kind of did a couple of others. Now, so that's largely, so this, what I'll probably talk about, while I will use some structured frameworks and some concepts and so on and so forth. And I've tried to make this very simplistic because I probably was not aware of the level of the attendees. I'm like, are they starting up? Are they thinking of an idea? Are they in a business already and thinking of some expansions and extensions? So I've made this very basic, but feel free to kind of have any questions. And I'm also not going to go into the regular stuff of the nitty-gritties of writing the plans and so on and so forth, because what we have for you, for all the attendees, is after the session, we will give you access to two self-paced online courses or programs, which will give you enough material to help you kind of build out plans and so on and so forth. So with that, I'm going to now share my screen and go through a couple of slides. The idea is more to keep it simplistic, practically oriented, so that you can kind of pick a couple of the concepts and use them. So I think, like with everything else, let's start with the entrepreneur first, right? So I think what's very important, in fact, and some of the syndicated research data, there's enough available that says that literally 9 or maybe even more than 9 out of 10 startups in some form or the other in a 3-year horizon fail. And that's a very scary number. But yet, like Mr. Kothari said, that India is kind of now one of the, in fact, the third largest pool of entrepreneurship and creating of these new startup ventures and so on. So that's exciting. But the point is, if you analyze the reasons why, I think the core reason why a business fails is the most important part is the entrepreneur, right? And what's important is before we start a business, and I faced it myself. So because it's not that all my businesses that I created were very successful. I've probably made some of the greatest mistakes that even if you attempt the hardest, you will not be able to match it, right? But that's what brings the learnings, right? So the first thing that I learned was it's building a business or a startup is very different from, so I started my first startup after having been a managing director and a CEO of an MNC for about 7 years, right? So I was running a large company. I had all learnings and experiences of running that company. But when I started as an entrepreneur and I tried to use some of those concepts, they didn't work. So it's what's important is the first thing I learned was 6 things, right? That all entrepreneurs need as foundational and core qualities: pragmatism, right? Humility, flexibility, authenticity, reinvention, and awareness, right? I'll just leave you with these words. You can, I'm saying all of us today know, but I think it's extremely important to be able to have the ability, right, to highlight all obstacles and challenges in order to resolve them and reduce risks. Because if you don't acknowledge a problem, you're never going to solve it, right? And it's very important to know that, and it's very usual for a business to start with something and then maybe pivot 3 or 4 times, before it can kind of, become a meaningful business that fits, the world. I'm sure a lot of you have, seen the movie Italian Job, right? For some of you that have not, please see it and watch out for a scene which has Stella she has to open a safe, you see, and she doesn't have the codes. And she is trying to listen to the right clicks to get the safe to open. A startup fitting into a business opportunity and making it big is exactly like that. You have to have your ear to that click to be able to then go all out and build on it, right? So humility, flexibility, I think that's important. So you have to keep adapting, authenticity, showing both your strengths and weaknesses, being human, right? You are not, nobody can be a superhuman, right? We all build businesses using the abilities that we have. Reinvention and awareness, right? So I think extremely important 6 words that you should remember. Next, the greatest thing that I learned, which is probably worth its weight in gold as an entrepreneur, is to listen. Because a lot of times when you are starting a business, you want to speak, right? So it's important, yes, you need to speak, but that's the second most important thing. The most important thing is to listen effectively, right? And what do you need to do that? Stop talking. Stop interrupting. Focus completely on what is being said. Make people aware that you're listening, because that's when they will share more, right? So nod, encouraging words and gestures. Be open-minded. Think about what is the speaker's perspective, right? Step into their shoes, understand. Because as an entrepreneur, one of the first things that you have to do is to absorb, be a sponge. Because the more you absorb, the more insights, whether it's the market, whether it's your competition, whether it's your team, you will learn, and that is what you will then deploy to create successful businesses and business ideas. Be very, very patient. Pay attention to the tone that is being used. Pay attention to the speaker's gestures. Try not to rush the person. Not let the speaker's mannerisms or habits irritate or distract you. Don't worry about people have their own idiosyncrasies. You're here to take the benefit, so be a sponge, absorb, right? And listen effectively. Also, equally important is to speak effectively, because if you are starting a business, you have to go sell the idea, sell the concept. So prepare, there is no, even if I remember when I was, the CEO of an MNC and we had a board meet, I would rehearse my presentation at least 3 to 4 times before I went to the board, right? And people would say, well, you know what, you could just speak like that, but why do you do this? I would even research and figure it out. How much time should I increase or decrease? And because you're on the stage, you have to deliver that in that much time, and you have to deliver it to the best of your ability. So you have to invest. If you plan to be an entrepreneur and do a startup, there is no other way, but you have to invest your skills, energy, time in being able to speak effectively, right? For somebody, it's natural. For some others, you have to work on it. So work on it, right? Whether it's your body language, eye contact, these are small elements, but the amount of impact that they have in being able to connect with people, because at the end of the day, let's understand there is a tipping point, right? Give and take a little bit here and there. All ideas are here. The great ideas are here, and there are a pool of them. And somebody has to make a decision on which one do I pick. You'd be surprised how some of these small things make a big impact, and sometimes are decision-making factors in tipping the scale, right? So make sure that whether it's about incorporating body language, building a draft of your speech before you actually speak, ensuring that all your emotions and feelings are under control, It's important to be passionate, but be passionate in a controlled way that exhibits the positive side of it. Right? Pronounce your words distinctively with the correct pitch and intensity. Very important, because you may be you're saying something, but the person at the other end, are they receiving it in that order? Right? Extremely important. Uh, Please use present. Use natural tones when speaking, because if you kind of put on a facade, it's very easy to call it out, and that's a bad idea, right? Be brief. A lot of times we use, especially, and I have at the end of this, very clear 10 mistakes not to make in your elevator pitch, right? And I'll talk about that. But brief, succinct. Today, nobody has the time for long pitches, long business plans. You should be able to communicate. You should have a super elevator, as I call it. 15 seconds, you're in an elevator. So the reason why it's called an elevator pitch is, think of yourself in being in an elevator. And today, like with everything else, the speeds of the elevators have increased. So earlier they took their own sweet time. So you could take your time in making the elevator pitch, but now it goes very quickly, right? So 15 seconds is what your super elevator should be. In 15 seconds, you should be able to communicate what you want, who you are and what you want to kind of get done, right? And obviously, it's very important that, like I said, you have to communicate and you have to have the hygiene elements in place to communicate. Next, you have to be a problem solver. Somebody very rightly said, everything that can go wrong in a business goes wrong, and yet you have to be successful, right? That's the reality of business. So, you have to be a natural problem solver. And it's not something that is a skill that you're born with. You use frameworks and you solve problems, right? So identify a problem, study the problem in detail, list all possible solutions, select the best solution. I'm like, these are very simple things to do, but have a structure. Everybody can have their own variations of the structure, but it's extremely important because as an entrepreneur, one of the things that you'll be doing the most is going to be solving problems for the business, your teams, customers, everything, right? And again, it again comes back to core foundational skill sets and attitudes, right? So be open-minded, ask the right questions, be proactive, don't panic. At the end of the day, every problem, if it is created, it will be solved, right? And I think, it was very nicely put in, again, a beautiful movie called The Best Marigold Hotel, where Judi Dench says, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, then you haven't gotten to the end, right? So it's extremely simple. If there is a problem, there has to be a solution, right? So don't panic, figure it out, solve the problem. And be a natural problem solver and solve problems based on a framework. Have a positive attitude, focusing on the right problem. The other thing that you will see yourself doing the most when you start up as an entrepreneur is negotiation. You will have to negotiate with everything in life. Everything is about an opportunity, cost, and option value, right? So I'm not going to go into the details, but you can have mentors and you can kind of read about negotiation and you can practice that, but developing negotiation abilities, and it's not something that there are techniques of negotiation, it's a science, right? It becomes an art beyond a point and after practice, but it starts off as a science. So invest time in building skills, in building negotiation skills, right? Now, let's come to the opportunity. So finding the right business opportunity is the key, right, at the end of the day. And a critical question that kind of, all entrepreneurs face is, how do I go find the right business opportunity? And what's right, that'll be right for me, that'll be right for the business and so on. And, should I, introduce new product or a service based on an unmet need? Should the enterprise select an existing product or service from one market and offer it? It was successful in the US. Can I adapt it and kind of, launch it here? Will that work? Or, should there be a tried and tested formula which has worked somewhere else? I take that and kind of make it work. So it's extremely important that, you figure the right business opportunity. And sometimes, what's very important is a lot of us have great ideas. And I say, oh, I have a great business idea. There is a difference between an idea and an opportunity. And when does an idea become an opportunity? When an idea, it becomes an opportunity if it can create or adds value to a customer, right? If it solves a significant problem, removes the pain points, or meets a demand, has a robust market and profit margin, is a good fit with the founder and management team at the right time and the right place. So it's extremely important to, every time you have a business, a lot of people say, hey, I have a business idea. Great. Is that a business opportunity as well? That's the question to ask, right? And while these are four, fundamentals, but I think there could be more. So make sure that you have your own mechanism or a sieve through which you distill an idea and see if it kind of comes down as an opportunity. So how do you actually go and identify a new business opportunity? I'm like five suggestions. You could identify market inefficiencies. So, when looking around the market, consider what inefficiencies are present in the market. Think about ways to correct these inefficiencies, because at the end of the day, there is something called the game theory, and the game theory at the fundamental level is always correct. And what that means is that for somebody to win, there must be an opportunity for somebody to lose, or there must be an inefficiency which is the loss, so that everybody gains, right? In that order. So you have to identify such inefficiencies. Remove key hassles. Rather than create a new product or a service, you can innovatively improve a product or a service process, and that can be a great business opportunity, right? I'm like, a couple of years ago, many years ago, New York faced an issue of cab drivers. There was a shortage of cab drivers, right? And while there were people who could drive, but they didn't know the streets well, right? So what got created was, a new set of cab drivers who had demarcation and colors and patterns that were kind of printed, and that the price was slightly lower, but it was very clear that you had to give directions to that guy, right, to drive you around, because they knew how to drive, but they didn't know the nooks and corners of the city, right? So the problem that got solved, and this actually was a very interesting case study that happened, many years ago. And like this, there are tremendous amounts. So it's not important that your idea is, in fact, another example that you should always remember is, and this is very true for technology companies. When people today, a lot of it is about digital. And when I kind of, look at various opportunities and, look at them, what I see people trying to do is they're trying to build a car, but they are trying to build the tires, the rubber, they're trying to build the glass, they're trying to build every component of the car. Now think of, if you were to build that as a business, would you ever be successful, right? You have to look at thin crust businesses, which are easy to pivot, right? So you can probably, collaboration, co-opetition, I think those are the buzzwords, right? You have to, work as a part of the winning ecosystem. So even if you do a small thing, right? If there are great examples. In fact, the world's most successful online affiliate program is of a company that only has a chat which you can plug onto your website, right? And it's a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So sometimes, so long as you're a part of the flow and the largest ecosystem, even if you're doing a small component, that's great, right? Then look at creating something new, right? I again remember way back in 1999, at that stage, was the time that I worked on the first startup, but that was, I'm like, I didn't invest my money. It was at that stage, incubated by ICICI. And we set up a company called Travel Genie. It was around the same time that Make My Trip set up their US to inbound business. At that stage, online tickets or e-tickets had not happened. But I was very clear that I think there is a huge opportunity in people being able to see the ticket prices and be able to book. People said, hey, you're mad. How will this work? I actually invested in people wearing blue dungarees, having a page board with two bells, like how you have in hotel lobbies, who would stand at the entrance of the airport in the four metros. So the tickets were booked online. These people carried it and they offered it to the people, and the people took them and flew. And I remember that year, I was a keynote speaker at the National Digital Conference. There were some 800 people in the room. And I made a statement saying, well, ladies and gentlemen, give it 3 years, 25% of all online bookings bookings for tickets, flight tickets are going to be online. And then they kind of moved the camera on the audience, and every single person there was clapping and laughing, saying, what a joker. I'm like, how can that ever happen? You see? And it was very humbling because I was again at that same conference a couple of years, and the president of IMAI, Internet Mobile Association, said, well, before you talk, I'm going to play a small video. And they actually played the video of that time. And here we were 3 years down the line, 80% of all tickets were booked on. So sometimes you have to create something new, and sometimes you just have to believe in yourself. You see, fair enough, maybe it doesn't work, but don't waste yourself so much that if it fails, move on, right? But today, a lot of times what we see happening is people catch on one idea and then throw so much of money at it, right? Get funded and kind of, that if it doesn't work, they make sure that they then change everything around to make it work, So thin crust models, right? Which can be pivoted. If it doesn't work, fair enough, move on, right? Pick a growth sector or an industry, think about product differentiation. So those are some ways that you can kind of look at some business opportunity. Let's understand what is the simplistic entrepreneurial process, right? And there are no shortcuts here. So generate an idea, think through it, recognize it, put the nuts and bolts around it, rationalize it and see how it will kind of work in the real world. Incubate it, do some feasibilities. Today, one of the most important things in a business is a public beta, right? If you are thinking of something, you have to get a minimum viable product and take it to real customers, right? Because unless and until you don't have that feedback, it's going to be very difficult for you to build a strong business, because then it's going to be production-oriented marketing, not marketing-oriented production, right? So follow the process. I'm like, somebody put it after a lot of thought, right? Fair enough. You could kind of spend lesser time than it would traditionally would have taken to go through this. But the fact is, you can't, bypass this. Extremely important to be aware of and leverage the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? So there are 6 domains around this place, right? So favorable culture, and these include things like tolerance to risk, valuable networking, positive social standing of the entrepreneur, and those elements, leverage them, right? Do not be ashamed. When you're an entrepreneur, don't be ashamed for asking somebody a favor, right? I'm like asking somebody to mentor you, asking somebody to help you build a connection. You have to do that. Everybody who started that way did it, right? So don't be ashamed of it. Leverage, this aspect of the domain. Facilitating policies and leadership. Today, I think we're probably in a time where you have so much. You have the establishment, you have the government. There are so many schemes, and I have a slide which kind of lists some 15 schemes that you could kind of leverage from. So be aware of it, right? It's for you, right? Leverage it. Financing options extremely important, right? What because today, whether it's about angel finance, venture capital, in fact even MSME, stocks and stock exchange frameworks and stuff like that. So today we're in a space where there are so many things, but a lot of times people are not aware of this, right? So take some time, get somebody to help you understand the various financing options. Human capital, extremely important, right? Because if you get a wrong hire when you're doing a startup, uh, it's bad news, right? Because the cost of replacement, time, energy that you will lose, so extremely important to pick the right people. Have small teams, manageable teams, and once you have institutionalized your processes and stuff, then use that as a framework to expand and grow the human capital. Conducive market and product services, existence or scope of existence of a market or a product or a service. So be aware of those, elements in the environment. Institutional infrastructure support, extremely important. You understand the legal nuances, you understand the tax compliance, you understand various other elements that could kind of play a role in. You may have a great business idea, but if maybe the financial model is something that falls in a little bit of a gray turf, you could go on and get tripped up later if you've not kind of thought through that, right? So extremely important that you put some time to this. And there are enough people. You don't have to go and hire, the best of, top paying lawyers and stuff. There are enough people who are there to help, right? And who are there to mentor. Get their advice. They will be, because there is no great financial, incentive for them, they will actually give you very good, genuine advice, right? So please use that. Okay, let's look at, like I said, some key schemes. I'm just going to kind of, rattle off a few, and I'm like, so basically the idea is there's a lot that is available today, and this is true. I'm like, here, if you are building a global business that's based here but expanding in different countries, whether it's Australia, Singapore, UK, US, I'm like, you name them, all the countries have some super duper schemes, right? India, I'm like, if you just go through, these are central government schemes. You go to the state government, they have a bunch of schemes. So make sure you leverage them. They are for you to, make good of, right? So make sure, you are aware of them and leverage them. And then lastly, the most important thing that you will need, right, in your journey as an entrepreneur is something called entrepreneurial resilience, right? Because, like I said, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, right? Always remember one example. When you're an entrepreneur, you are like an aircraft on the runway, right? If you try, the aircraft goes, it reaches a particular speed, and that's when, you kind of pull it off. And within a matter of seconds, you're at 10,000 feet and 20,000 feet then and 30,000 feet thereafter, right? Imagine if the aircraft, if it started and it would try to jump and take off in between, what will happen? It'll never take off and it'll kind of have a crash landing. So put your head down there. If you have the right business idea at the right time, it will take off, right? I have seen that, in building a bunch of businesses. You have to have that resilience, right? And how do you do that? Build sounding boards, develop professional network of coaches and mentors, accepting that change is a part of life. View obstacles as something that can be overcome. I'm like, again, a cliched thing, but I'm like, I have it written on my wall everywhere. The very word impossible says, I am possible. So if the word impossible is possible, then everything is possible, right? Have that positive mindset, right? Because like I said, everything that can go wrong in a business will go wrong, but you still have to be successful, right? So have a strong internal sense of control, ability to diversify and expand, strong social connections, survivor attitude, right? Skill to learn from setbacks, cash flow conscious habits, extremely important. Today, I'm like, you see around yourself, some, poster boys of getting funded aggressively and stuff. Some have made it extremely good, right? And those businesses have really, I'm talking about a global landscape, but a lot of businesses that just focus on raising money, right? Without laying emphasis on the unit economics and the core strategy of the business, sooner or later are destined to fail, right? No matter whether you throw billions into them, it's only a matter of time before they fail, right? So build foundational elements that are strong, and then, because on top of that, if you kind of go raise good money, because it's, people are soon realizing the days of putting good money for bad are over, right? I don't think any business can sustain that any longer, right? We've seen some of the world's greatest, private equity firms, and have write off and have losses in quarters into tens of billions of dollars, right? I'm sure everybody there is a time, and so it's extremely important to have models that are solid and for the future. With that, I think let me just take you to a quick, if you start off, your business, ask yourself these 20 questions. Why am I starting a business? What problem am I solving? Have others attempted to solve this problem before? Did they succeed or fail? Do I have a mentor or industry expert that I can call on? Extremely important. Who is my ideal customer? Personify, right? Personify your customers. Who are my competitors, right? Understand them extremely well. Today, with the internet and stuff, you can kind of know more about the competition than at some point they would know about themselves, right? Because there's so much data that is kind of today available. What makes my business idea different from other business ideas? What are key features of my product or service? Have I done a SWOT analysis? Do I know my strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats? What is the size of the market that I will, take my product or my service? Extremely important. And when you think of the market today, the earlier, when we built businesses, it was quite a task to globalize a business. But today, the delta or the effort, additional effort involved in globalizing your business is extremely small, right? So the opportunity cost option value, when you think of a business, think of it at a global landscape, right? And with digitization, there are equalizers. Today, you can be sitting, in a garage and building a piece of software or technology with which you can kind of touch. I'm like, if you were to just say you were only in English, you could go to 75 countries, and market your product. You could touch literally 3.2 billion people out of almost, 7.9 billion people in this world. If you just launch a simple English product, just use, digital marketing and take that through. There are payment gateway services. The whole architecture is so amenable to launching global businesses. So if you think of something, because that probably is going to be one of your greatest risk mitigators, right? Because you may, be in a particular area where the competition may be tough, pricing could be a challenge. But if you globalize your business, right, you could fail in one market, but you could be successful in another, and that can kind of hold you and take you forward, right? I'm like, if you just Google up the caterpillar strategy, you'll figure out what I mean, right? Sometimes it's important to build your bones in a non-core market, get your resources, and then come back and fight the biggest guy in the, in your core market. So what would it take to build the minimum viable product to test, in the market? How much money do I need to get started? Will I need to take a loan? How soon will my product and services be available? Extremely important to have shrink cost models that you can go to market very quickly, right? Today, the life cycle of starting a business and taking it out to business, to the market sometimes is even 30 days, right? How will those who invest in my idea make a profit? How should I set up the legal structure of my business? What taxes will I need to pay? What kind of insurances will I need? Extremely important, right? You have to cover yourself for the rainy day. Have I reached out to potential customers for feedback? Right? With that, just conscious of time. So I think we have about uh, 9 minutes remaining. So I have a couple of other slides which I'll kind of run through, and kind of, then we can kind of quickly see if there are any questions. But happy to, answer any questions over email or at any other time. So basically, elevator pitch. That probably is going to be the most important thing when you're starting a business. An elevator pitch is maybe a quick 30 seconds of your business idea, or maybe so 15 seconds. It's like, think of you making a call, right? When you make a call to somebody, before somebody can respond to you saying, I'm not interested, there is that 10-15 second, right? And that 10-15 seconds, it may not be on the phone, it may be while you're shaking a hand with somebody, while you're kind of meeting somebody at an event, while you're walking together with somebody in the elevator, and so on and so forth, right? 15 seconds. 15 seconds, you must generate enough interest for the person to give you another 45 seconds to 60 seconds, another minute, right? 45 to 60 seconds, right? That's the second level that you get. And then that should be interesting enough for the person to then probably give you a listening of maybe 15 minutes, right? That's all that you will ever get with people who really matter, who are going to make big investment decisions, right? So extremely important to flesh and crystallize the 15 seconder, the 45 seconder, 45 to 60 seconder, and then maybe a 15 minutes, right? So writing business plans, and in fact, coming to that, today, the days of writing big business plans, you can have all of that as an extras, right? I'm like, you can do your homework, you can have spreadsheets, you can do all of that. But the fact is, am I able to communicate what I want in 15 seconds, 45 seconds, and then 15 minutes, right? So quickly, some mistakes to avoid, right? Obviously, you have to create interest, right? You have to create interest. So adapt. You don't have to have one elevator pitch. You can have a base elevator pitch, and depending on who you're presenting to, bring something in at the start that catches. It's a hook that catches the imagination, idea, thinking, perspectives, of the person that you're trying to present to, right? So so make sure that you create an interest, right? Because most of the time, you go and talk about what you have in mind, not thinking about, is that person interested in what I'm going to say, right? So think of this, rambling, right? I'm like, once you have, like I said, if you prepare a 15 seconder, 45 seconder in 15 minutes, you're never going to ramble, right? Rambling is when you're not crystal clear and you're not clear, concise, and then you're kind of trying to use filler words, right? I'm like, you don't sometimes realize it if you just record it yourself and listen it back again, you realize what I mean, right? So do not ramble, right? Speaking too fast. Now, hey, I have 15 seconds, let me go, tuck, 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 tuck. No. Because if you do that, the purpose is lost, right? You have to, so 15 seconds does not mean that you have to speak fast. You have to speak so that it's clear, it's concise, and don't worry about, I'm like, we don't have to kind of fill more and then try and tighten the cap, right? I'm like, whatever can go into the bottle will go into the bottle, and that's when you have to shut it, right? So make sure that you are not speaking too fast. Do not use highly technical terms, acronyms, slangs. It's a bad idea. I'm like, today, a lot of us have gotten used to the SMS or the WhatsApp language, right? I'm like, most people don't appreciate it for professionals, right? It's great at a time and a place, but when you're making a pitch, you're on stage, right? There are no, I'm like, it's professional. So make sure that you reflect the best of professionalism. And, when you throw a lot of technical jargons, if your audience is somebody that can appreciate it, fair enough, go technical. But if not, if it's investors, they don't understand, technical terms, and they're not going to be asking you because they will not have the time to ask a question. You don't have the time to respond. So make sure that whatever you say is least common denominator in terms of understandability, right? Um, you have to relate to your audience, right? You have to make sure that you say things that people can understand and it makes sense to them, and so on, and make eye contacts that you constantly, adapt, right? If you're seeing people, they're not responding, you don't see the right facial expressions, uh, you know, move around, move to something more interesting. Not practicing what to say, you are going to say, right? So make sure, like I said, preparation, preparation, preparation. So make sure that you prep. The benefits of that have been time tested, right? Uh, don't be robotic, right? Don't, voice modulation, right? You have to create interest. You have to create highs and lows of passion, interest, and stuff, because that's what catches people's attention. If you go monosyllable, na 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 na, won't work. I'm like, people wonder, hey, I'm like, I don't see the interest. No, I could not see the interest there. I'm done. I'm like, that's how a lot of people, on the table kind of, talk about people who are making pitches and so on. Uncomfortable body language, right? So be conscious of today. I'm like, if you Google it up, I'm like, there is enough material on what are some good things to do, right? Practice, right? Build those skills, right? Attend a small class. There are many available. There are people who will coach you on a friendly basis. Do that. uh, don't show desperation, right? Yes, we are very desperate to raise the funding, but do not show desperation, right? Because the term sheet that you will then get next is going to completely put you up against the wall, right? So it's important to have the balance of showing passion. There's a very thin line between passion and desperation, right? Make sure that you know where to draw the line, right? Extremely important. And lastly, uh, not giving people time to respond, right? I'm like, you have to, uh, you know, uh, allow people and respond to what they have in mind. And I think that's the perfect slide to stop, right? And ask for questions. Like I said before, as a part of this, I've not gone into the nuts and bolts because that's very mundane. And we have a beautiful course, which is actually put together by us, which is for the benefit of, people who are wanting to set up a business. So building entrepreneurial skills, it'll probably take you about 10, 12 hours. It has all the nuts and bolts, right? So if you do that course, at least financially, what skills you need, what basic life skills, what other, skills, it'll give you everything, right? So, and this is absolutely with our compliments. So please use it. We're soon going to be, through the MCCI, secretariat, communicating that to you. Please do that course. And the second one is on time management skills. The author of this is somebody who I had wanted me to join on the call today, Leah Schimling, a colleague of mine. Unfortunately, she's tidily tucked up in her bed in Melbourne because it's kind of, almost close to midnight there. But the next time around, I'm like, we'll bring her in. But her course is here for you to benefit from, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur, your own time is your greatest asset, and you have to kind of make sure that you are doing that well. That's, like I said, what we are doing. So it's a social enterprise, and like I said, we are making a lot of mistakes as well, right? It's still, this is, I'm in the same boat as you are, right? This is my latest startup, right? So let's learn from each other, right? Let's learn from each other, and make sure we grow together, right? So with that, I'll kind of stop and see if there are any questions. I hope, like I said, I've tried to make sure that I wind up on time. So I guess it's time. So happy to take any questions from anybody. Any questions? All right. So I will hand it back over to you, Mr. Kothari.
Mr. Mitra, Mr. Singh, we have Mr. Smarjit Mitra, our chairman of the MCA Council for the Startups. So he's also here. And if you have any questions, Mr. Mitra?
No, Mr. Singh, first apologies for the technical glitch which caused me to get delayed by a few moments. Wished I had been here, but I heard your entire discourse, and I wish it had gone on for the next n number of hours. I think this has been a great thing going through. My question is, as a serial entrepreneur and in startups and in MSMEs, what is your message to the new upcoming entrepreneur who has to go through a rigmarole of, should I say, social, economic, political extra pressure to help him to succeed beyond what you have said? It would be wonderful if you could share maybe 2-3 points.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So I think what is important is, see, the word entrepreneur is a very overarching word, right? Yes. An entrepreneur can be somebody who sets up a simple, shop on the road and, mends shoes. The person is an entrepreneur, right? And deserves the, respect and regard as much as somebody who is doing a $100 million funded startup, right? So what's important is to, no matter where and how and what you want to do, like I said, I first started with intrinsic skills, right? So as all of us, as let's say influencers or people who can kind of influence and help, what's important is to get the person some core skills to be an entrepreneur, you see. And in fact, there is this course that we have put up there. It's a free course that we are trying to push out to, hopefully maybe 10 million people across the country. And that's the reason why we built a digital platform. So it's in 40 different languages. It's about, you could say, if I were to count the number of pages, because obviously it's in a more easy format, it actually starts with building life skills and work skills to be an entrepreneur, you see. Because if you have that, it gets you, a framework to think. And that thinking is not limited, whether it's a big idea, which requires a lot of investment, or it's a small, business, which in our mind is small, but, no business is big or small in that order, you see. So I guess the starting point of this is to identify this bare minimum, right? Which anybody thinking of being an entrepreneur, no matter what, and we have to get to him in what they are able to understand. So if it has to be on a mobile device, because that's all that some people have access to, if it has to be in the regional languages, and if it has to be in a form and format that they have to understand, so be it. So I would say that having this bare minimum denominator of a bedrock of learning is foundational to any success initiatives that we at a macro level plan for entrepreneurship. I guess once that is in place, right, like how we talk about basic literacy, right? Let's call this the basic literacy for entrepreneurship, you see. And because once you have given that learning in a capsulated format, and this is 10 hours maximum, you see. So to invest 10 hours before you think about a business for anybody is a very small investment to make, you see, to go forward. So I guess, to answer your question, it's important to take these foundational steps. And like this is one, and like I said, this is such an engaging topic. I could kind of go on for hours and hours. I'm like, unfortunately, there's some of us who are just very passionate about all of this, you see. But like I said, I hope that does answer some part of your question.
It sure does. Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton.
There are two questions on Q&A.
Yes.
From Ayush Ved. Do you think that financial planning like shares and stocks should be invested in, especially in established business like in mutual funds? This is number one. And then there's another question from Vishal Agarwal. We request you to kindly cater to these, answer these questions.
So you'll have to repeat the first question again. I kind of missed a part of it.
Yes, it is there on Q&A. Do you think that financial planning like shares and stocks should be invested in established business like in mutual funds? I think he meant that only, especially in established business like in mutual funds. From Ayush
I think that's more of a financial investment decision, right?
Right.
And see, my 2 cents of this is whether if you just so that it can help you, whether you're making investments at any stage as in the investor cycle, right? What you have to be clear about is what's your risk appetite, right? And you have to understand the various different instruments. So mutual funds, do have a risk, rating and understanding and so on and so forth. So read the fine print, and depending on your, appetite for risk, you make the investments there. And the other 2 cents here, if that's of any worth, is whenever you're investing, make sure you have a diversified portfolio, right? So make sure that you have some components which are principal protected. Make sure you have some that are high risk. So some will go up, some will come down, but at the end of the day, you will grow, right? So I think that's. I'm not sure if I have done justice to answering your question, but I guess that's the best I could kind of make of it.
Ayush, well, you're here. You can speak.
So I think your answer is very good, and I think that your answer gives justice to my question.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then there's another question from Vishal Agarwal. Very rightly said that a startup shouldn't try to do everything by themselves. Just like a car manufacturer cannot afford to manufacture each and every part required in the car. Considering a tech startup, what is your advice on how to decide what to outsource and when to do that? I'm getting Vishal Agarwal on board.
Sure. So, Vishal, I think that's a very important question. And, I'll give you a practical example of what we're doing, right? So, we have we have to, typically when you're thinking of technology, I'll give you an example so that it's very clear, right? Now, a lot of people, let's say I have to build a technology to facilitate e-learning for people, right? So I need to kind of build a ed-tech software, which includes having content and having a learning management system to take that content, and then maybe also having some components of, virtual, classrooms and stuff like that. Now, what a lot of people traditionally, will do is they will go and build and there are so many businesses that have gone and invested a lot of time in building what a Google or a Zoom or a GoToMeeting is already doing, right? The point is all of them have APIs available, right? So today, if you just look at AWS, if you just look at Amazon, if you look at Google, if you look at Microsoft, and if you look at a couple of others, there are more than about 240 odd service features, right, or APIs that you can consume. So you have to think, if somebody is already making something and they're doing it at a scale which is here and at a cost that is here, right, why should you reinvent and do that, right? So you start thinking, like I said, I think always remember the car example, right? There are already component manufacturers of technology today, right? You use those APIs, right? Plug them in, build your intelligence and logic layer, which is unique, right? So instead of wasting your money and time in building something, because the fact is, let's say if you were to build a online, a collaboration tool like Zoom, I'm like, it's going to cost you a lot of time and money to do that. But the fact is, there's already Zoom, and Zoom has an API, and that's available at an extremely low cost. So you just plug that in and then build a feature which a Zoom does not have, and take that to the market in half the time that you would have taken to do so. So that's how you need to think of modern startups, which are thin crust. Does that answer your question, Vishal?
That sounds good. Thanks for the explanation.
All right. Thank you.
We now move on to the third question from Polly Shield. Sir, can you please tell us the requirements for arranging funds? I mean, how does one approach funders and pitch and get fundings for startup? I'm getting Polly Shield.
Sure. So, see, this is there is no perfect science to this, Polly, at the end of the day. See, what's important, I can tell you the framework, right? So let's say depends on what business idea do you have, right? Is it a high investment consumer business? Does it need a lot of funding? Is it a B2B business, right? What is it, right? So based on that business, and once you determine so the first piece is create a prototype, create a minimum viable product, do a public beta, and then understand how much money do you actually need, right, to take that out. And you have to, well, a lot of us today think of, hey, the greatest success of a business is to go raise money for it, right? We hear some stories and we are very enamored by them, but the fact is this is one in maybe 20,000, 50,000 use cases, right? So once you have done your minimum viable product, that is what, and you have some data points, and the data points are strong, that itself is your ticket to raising funding. Because otherwise what you're going to do is you're going to be going to 20 people and they are not going to be engaging you for discussions for funding, and you probably get demotivated, right? You don't have to get demotivated because you probably went at a point where you had not crystallized and you didn't have data points, right? So it's not that, and a lot of times people think of that, oh, I went to so many people, but I did not get funded. You see, it's just that maybe you went too early, right? So make sure you have a stage of getting investments that takes you to the MVP, minimum viable product, or a public beta. And you may not need a lot of money, and that can be friends, family, angel investors. So the first people that you need to look at are the angel investors, right? And today there are also for the MSMEs and for women entrepreneurs and there's a lot of government schemes which do not need any collateral, for raising debt, right? So there's equity, which is angel investors and stuff who will take away a part of your business, shares in your business, and then there is debt, right? So and some of them are debt which do not need collaterals and stuff like that, which are kind of in a way sponsored by the government, right? So explore those options, right? There are also certain subsidies that you are kind of entitled to, in certain states, in certain sectors and stuff like that. So be aware of them. Use that to get your minimum viable product. Once you have the proof points of the minimum viable product, the public beta, then do your modeling of how much money then you need. And that's when you kind of then go and pitch that to venture capitals or PEs, depending on what it is. And depending on how it is, see, sometimes you could do that yourself, or you could even engage investment banking firms to do that professionally for you. And earlier it was they would charge you a fixed upfront fees and stuff. But if your idea is great, they may charge you minimalistic upfront fee and take a share of the funds that they raise help you raise, right? So that, because that makes sure that you do it in a professional way, right? Rather than, because they'll help you get your pitch decks ready, they'll help you, get, your company structuring, all of those elements ready, and so on and so forth. So, and other than that, there are also many mentors, right? Who will be very happy to help you with that process. Does that give you, a helpful answer?
Yes, sir. It will surely help me into
All right.
building my firm. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we now move on to the fourth question, the last question for today, from Jyoti Srivastava. How to deal with fear and doubt while starting a startup? I'm getting Jyoti Srivastava on board.
Wonderful. So, Jyoti, there is no secret sauce, right, to dealing with fear. And like I said, my last slide was about entrepreneurial resilience, right? You will have sleepless nights, right? You're going to wake up at 4 in the morning saying, hey, can I kind of have more hours in the day because I want to do more? Make sure, see, it's about lifestyle, right? Make sure you have enough exercise, you eat the right food, you kind of practice, meditation, you have a good, see, sometimes, people think it's all about a business sense to build successful businesses. No, it's about your ecosystem, it's about your family, it's your loved ones, it's how you kind of, treat life, you see? Because these are factors that are going to help you during this time, right? Can you not have stress in building a startup? Absolutely, you're going to have stress, right? But the reality of life is you have to overcome that, you see? And you can overcome that. So I'll give you another example. If you have a structured plan, imagine you have to climb Mount Everest, right? And every day you think, oh, I have to climb Mount Everest, I have to climb Mount Everest. You're going to go crazy thinking about it. But if you have a plan saying, today I have to go so much close to the base camp, Everest base camp. Next day, I have to reach Everest base camp. Next day, I have to go to camp 1 above the Everest base camp. So long as you have bite-sized goals, right? And you achieve, so you have the bigger picture, break them into bite-sized goals, right? And then achieve them, you will get a sense of satisfaction, happiness, and surround yourself with, like I said, some of these good practices, right? Because entrepreneurship is going to test your resilience, right? And you can't crack up because sometimes, like I said, the planes on the runway, always remember that, right? You will reach a point where without you knowing, you will take off, and in a matter of seconds, I'll share one example with you, right? From my business, building a business. This was the year 2007, right? I launched an online travel company called Travelocity. In fact, it was supported by Sabre, which is the world leader in travel. And people were not booking online, you see. And I had made some investments, and I had to show some numbers. Till that time, I was doing some 35 tickets a day, right? And by the time about close to 50, 70 crores of investment would have had gone into the business. And I was doing 30 tickets a day. So the point came, well, what do I do? So at that stage, today we are very, familiar with, flash sales and stuff. In 2007, I took the front page of all national dailies. There was Air Sahara, if you remember. I looked at the price between Bombay and Delhi, and I still remember it was some 1,400 and some rupees, which was the Rajdhani fare. I took a price that was 10 rupees lower and obviously launched a limited time sale on the front page of all national dailies on a particular day. That was a point in time. If that failed, I would have to shut this business down that I was doing, right? It was at that stage, right? So that was where my mental mode was. Those few hours decided whether I would be successful in that venture or walk away, right? And in 45 minutes, in 2007, I filled up 16 Boeing aircrafts. Some of the people in the country making their first online booking, for that, because till that time they'd never gone there. But when they saw that price, right, and saying flights equal to less than Rajdhani, people went on and booked it. That day, I did a couple of thousand of tickets. And since that day, obviously the business fell, but then consistently, I was doing above 1,000 tickets a day and 1,200 tickets a day. And thanks to some of these other things that we did, within 18 months, from scratch, we built a 1,200 crore business in turnover. Right? So that's what it is. It's resilience, you see. So think of the aircraft on the runway. You will hit a point where you will suddenly take off, right? Be there, right? I hope that's helpful.
Yes, sir. I sincerely appreciate everything you said. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
We have another question from Vishal Agarwal. We will take that offline. Vishalji, okay? We will take that offline. So we have come to the end of a very interesting session, and I would now request Mr. Saurajit Mitra, our council chairman, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Mitra ji.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's indeed a great honor and privilege for me personally to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of MCCI and myself to all present, and specifically to Sri Himanshu Singh. Well, fasten your seatbelts. We are about to take off. I think that's the message that Sri Singh has put forward. So startup being such an important space and Indian startups going great guns, we are looking forward to miracles happening every day, every second, in our minds as well as in business. Today's program dealt with an extremely interesting and engaging topic. The speaker, Sri Himanshu Singh, I am all in awe of you, sir, as Group CEO of Widegrow, digitalization pioneer and serial entrepreneur, for your highly informative deliberations from ground zero of entrepreneurship. I extend special thanks to Widegrow for their proposal to facilitate online classes on a complimentary basis to all the participants of this webinar in collaboration with MCCI. I also extend thanks to all the delegates for their gracious presence and participation in this event. I do hope that the session would be duly covered by the media. My special thanks go out to the universities of Calcutta, Jadavpur, IISWBM, Brainware, Adamas, Amity, IEM, and other educational institutions for their support in making this initiative successful and meaningful. With these words, I propose a warm and hearty vote of thanks and request you all to carry it with acclamation. Thanks once again, Mr. Singh. Thanks, Widegrow. Thanks, MCCI. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.